I've always been the second in my family, not the darling, not the golden child, just Haley, the youngest daughter whose existence was taken for granted, as a backdrop for the radiance of my older brother Tyler. His parents idolized him since childhood. He got a brand new bike, while I got his old one, with worn paint and scratches on the steering wheel. They bought expensive game consoles for him and books for me because Haley likes to read. He played soccer, and Mom and Dad attended every one of his matches, cheering loudly from the stands. And when I competed in running competitions, they only bothered to come to the finals, the only event I won. But even then, they spent half the time discussing how proud Tyler would be if he were in my shoes. And before we continue, write in the comments from which city you are watching this video. Enjoy. It's always been like this, and I'm used to it. I wasn't even angry. I just knew that my place was close by in the shadows. When Grandpa made his will, everything went the same way. Tyler got a spacious 4-bedroom house in a nice neighborhood, and I got a modest 2-bedroom house on the edge of the suburbs. It didn't surprise me, but one day I accidentally overheard a conversation between my mom and my grandfather, who put all the dots on the I. "Daddy, please," she begged, her voice soft but insistent. "Tyler will have a family someday. He needs space. Haley will be fine in a smaller house." I stood around the corner, clutching a cup of cold tea, and listened. They didn't know what I was hearing, but I didn't complain. What's the point? It has always been so. Tyler was the first, and I was the second. So I wasn't surprised when, at the regular monthly family dinner where I went more out of duty, Tyler and his wife Megan looked at each other, cleared their throat, and announced, "We have big news." Tyler broke into a wide grin. I lifted a glass of water to my mouth, preparing for another demonstration of their brilliant life, full of blessings that I had never had before. "We decided to sell the house," he continued with a satisfied look. I almost choked. "What?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "We're investing in an amazing opportunity," Megan said enthusiastically, almost bouncing on the spot. Mom and Dad clapped their hands for joy, not even doubting this decision. "Oh, how wonderful," Mom exclaimed, beaming with pride. I gripped the fork in my hand. "What kind of company?" I asked cautiously, not sharing their delight. "Jason is launching a technology platform that connects investors with startups," Tyler said, making a vague gesture with his hand as if explaining something obvious. "She will revolutionize the world of venture capital." "We're going to make so much money," Megan added with burning eyes. "Jason predicts 300% profit in the first year." I put down my fork. 300%, I repeated, raising my eyebrows in disbelief. "It sounds too good to be true." There was tension in the room. "You have 2 small children," I continued, looking at my brother. "Emma is only 5 and Jack is 3. Are you sure selling the house is the best move? Maybe you should invest some of your savings first instead of risking everything." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Megan snorted loudly, and Tyler gave me that condescending smile I've known since I was a kid. "Haley," he said slowly, as if he were explaining to a child, "I know you mean something good, but I studied finance at Westmore College, and you're an accountant who took classes at a community college. I think I know a little more about entrepreneurship than you do." I bit my tongue. Tyler never mentioned that he barely graduated from Westmore, while I graduated with honors and was promoted twice in my 5 years at his firm. But it was useless to argue. "Besides," he added, leaning back in his chair, "Grandpa left me a bigger house for a reason. He always knew that I was better at doing business. He would like me to take this opportunity." I could have told him that Grandpa only left him a bigger house because Mom begged for it, but what difference would it make? I could say that my grandfather, who made his fortune, albeit not a huge one, but still a solid one, thanks to caution, economy, and thoughtful, conservative investments, would be horrified at the very thought that Tyler would thoughtlessly sell his house to invest in a dubious, vague project. But what's the point? What's the point? I could have reminded my brother that his great friend Jason had already failed at his own startups 3 times in the last 5 years, and each time he found new people willing to believe in his grandiose ideas and part with the money, but Tyler still wouldn't listen. He was a grown man. He and Megan had made their choice. And to be honest, after a lifetime of supporting roles, I didn't want to save him from himself at all. "You're right," I finally said, finishing the water from the glass and carefully placing it on the edge of the plate. "It's your decision." Mom literally beamed as she looked at Tyler with the kind of admiration I'd never seen before when it came to me. "We're so proud of you," she said with genuine delight. "It takes a lot of courage to take the risk and take advantage of such an opportunity. You're a real entrepreneur, son," my father added cautiously. But by the way he straightened up slightly, I realized that, despite his usual restraint, he shared their shared delight. For the rest of the dinner, Tyler and Megan talked about how they were managing their future wealth, discussing travel plans, buying a vacation home, a private school for their children, and the limitless opportunities that now lay ahead. I was silent, nodding and smiling in the right places, while in my head I replayed my own plans for the gradual renovation of the small but already homely house that I inherited from my grandfather. Room by room, I methodically updated it, using the money I had accumulated from my boring accounting work. I finished the kitchen last month, and now it's my turn to use the bathroom. It's been 3 months since that dinner. That evening, I was standing in my newly renovated bathroom, enjoying a hot shower under a wide watering can that mimicked a tropical downpour, and I barely heard the hum of the phone that vibrated on the bedside table in another room. The first time, second, third. I ignored the calls, thinking that whoever it was would text me if it was important. Fourth, fifth. On the 6th time, I irritably turned off the water, grabbed a towel, and before I could dry myself properly, I looked at the screen. 6 missed calls from Mom. This was clearly a bad sign. I called back immediately. "Haley!" Mom answered instantly. Her voice was tense, worried. "Thank God you're in touch. Can you come over? Is it because of Tyler?" An hour later, I drove up to my parents' house and immediately noticed something strange. There was a mountain of suitcases, boxes, and packages piled up on the porch, as if someone had packed their things in a hurry and thrown them outside. I hadn't even managed to ring the doorbell when the front door burst open, and I was almost knocked down by 2 excited children, Emma and Jack, who literally ran into me, tangling their arms and legs. "Aunt Haley!" 5-year-old Emma screamed, wrapping her slender arms around my waist. "We're staying with Grandma and Grandpa now." I looked up and saw my mom standing in the doorway. She looked exhausted. Her usually neatly styled hair was disheveled, and the dark circles under her eyes betrayed fatigue. Behind her, at the back of the house, Tyler was nervously pacing the room, holding his phone to his ear, and Megan was sitting on the couch with a blank stare, staring at the laptop screen. "What's going on?" I asked, even though I already had a pretty clear idea of what had happened. Mom sighed wearily, led me inside, and carefully closed the door behind me. "Tyler and Megan. They had to leave the apartment," she whispered, casting an anxious glance in her son's direction. "Was the rent too high?" I suggested. "Yes," Mom swallowed. So that's what it's come to. Did they leak all the money?" I looked at my brother and couldn't help but smile bitterly. After selling the house, Tyler and Megan, instead of investing wisely, quickly bought a flashy red Porsche 911, completely impractical for a family with 2 children, then rented a luxury apartment in the city center, where just the view from the window was worth a fortune, and Tyler quit his stable job at the bank altogether, confident that he is now a successful investor who does not need a boring office routine. They invested about $500,000 in Jason's revolutionary business, which, according to him, was about to blow up the market and bring triple profits in the first year. They quickly spent the remaining $100,000 on an insanely expensive car and a luxury vacation in the Maldives, leaving the children with their parents for 3 weeks. I crossed my arms over my chest and looked at my mom. "And now what?" "They can't afford to rent a place," she sighed. "While they have nowhere to live, they will stay with us." I looked at Tyler. He was still pacing back and forth, clutching the phone in his hand, and his face expressed nervous tension, which I rarely saw on him. On the other end of the line, apparently, was Jason, their great businessman, whose next venture, apparently, collapsed. "Are you angry?" Mom suddenly asked, looking at me again with the same concern. I exhaled slowly. "No," I replied, although to be honest, I was overwhelmed with so many emotions that I didn't even know which one was the main one. "I just want to understand what they're going to do next." I watched as Tyler ended the call, put his phone in his pocket, and forced a tight smile that only made his face look more tense. "Jason says the first quarter always goes slowly," he announced loudly, obviously trying to sound cheerful, but there was a note of nervousness in his voice. "But everything is about to get better. Things are going to go uphill." I didn't say anything, just nodded and went into the kitchen to pour myself some water. My father followed me, and as soon as I turned around, I saw him wearily rubbing his face, running his hand through his thinning hair and sighing heavily. "How bad is it?" I asked quietly, watching the drops of water roll down the sides of the glass. The father hesitated before answering, as if choosing his words. "They burned everything out," he said dully. "The rent of the apartment cost $4,000 a month. The payment for the car was another $1,500. They couldn't keep up." I closed my eyes. Does Tyler still believe Jason? "Jason keeps saying they're on the verge of a breakthrough," his father said, shaking his head. "But I have a bad feeling about this." In the following weeks, I watched the situation from the sidelines, without intervening, without offering help, just watching as Tyler frantically tried to find a job. But his pride and confidence in his own exclusivity severely limited his choice. As a result, he got a job at a car dealership, a job certainly below his previous banking position, but at least something. Meanwhile, Megan was putting on a good face with a bad game, posting carefully selected photos on social media, creating the illusion that everything was fine, that life was wonderful, that their family was still living in luxury, although in reality they had been huddled in their parents' house for several months, experiencing serious financial difficulties. But my parents' house wasn't designed for 6 people. One evening, my mother called me and her voice sounded tired. There was something subtly disturbing in it. "Haley, honey," she began, hesitating. "I don't like to ask, but—" I was silent, letting her finish. "We struggle a bit with products. You know how it feels." "Of course I know. How much do you need, Mom?" "Oh, any help would help," she said hurriedly, and I could clearly hear the relief in her voice. "It's just a little tight this month." I promised to transfer the money immediately, choosing an amount of $600, enough to help, but not so much that it would hit my budget too much. When I told her the amount, Mom thanked me profusely, but there was a subtle note of disappointment in her voice. She was clearly hoping for more. The following month, I received another call and then another, and so the monthly transfer of $600 became a habit. I didn't mind helping my parents, but each time I noticed more and more acutely that Tyler and Megan, despite their difficulties, still hadn't gotten rid of the Porsche they bought immediately after selling the house. Their priorities remained the same. One evening, I found myself at my cousin Beth's birthday party, hoping that at least here I could take my mind off everything that was happening with Tyler. But as soon as I approached the dessert table, my Aunt Patty, adjusting the necklace around her neck, gently took my elbow and spoke in a low voice, anxiously looking around. "Haley, dear," she began sympathetically, as if she was preparing to tell me something unpleasant in advance. "How are you coping with all this? With Tyler?" I shrugged my shoulders, just trying to help in any way I can. Aunt Patty looked at me with an expression that made my stomach clench. "Well, you should know," she whispered, glancing over her shoulder once more, as if checking to see if anyone else could hear us. "Your parents are desperate. They love Tyler, of course, but his family, his presence in the house, it affects them." She took a small sip of wine and, coming a little closer, added, "Between you and me, they have a plan to fix this." My stomach turned cold. "What's the plan?" Aunt Patty looked me straight in the eye, her lips twitching before she said, "They want to move Tyler and his family to your house." For a second, I thought I'd misheard. "What? They think it makes sense," Aunt Patty continued, lowering her voice a little. "After all, you live alone in a 2-room house." I almost dropped the plate of cakes. "Are you kidding?" Aunt Patty shook her head. "They say it's only for a few months, but—" She looked around again, as if afraid we might be overheard. "Sheila told me that eventually they hope you'll just move out, leave the house to Tyler." I stood there, stunned, unable to comprehend what I had just heard, while Aunt Patty gently but firmly squeezed my hand as if trying to prepare me for what I was about to hear next. "I thought you should know," she said softly. "That's not right, Haley. They're plotting behind your back." The party was going on somewhere on the periphery of my mind. Laughter, clinking glasses, soft music, but I couldn't hear it all anymore because my thoughts were racing through my head, leaving behind only irritation and icy determination. How could they? They weren't just going to ask me to take in Tyler's family. They had already decided in advance that my house would become his home, and I, as something temporary, would simply disappear from the equation. Everything was planned, verified, and discussed in advance, and I wasn't even asked. I wasn't even given a chance to object. I knew how it would be. At first, they'll tell me that it's temporary, that they just need a little time to get back on their feet. Then there will be gentle pressure. "Well, Haley, it's harder for Tyler. He has children, and you're alone. It's easier for you. Then the bills will come. Utilities, food, repairs, unexpected expenses, which somehow will always fall on me. Eventually, they'll get so comfortable in my house that my move to another place will be just a formality, a matter of time. But no, not this time. I wasn't going to let them use me again. When I got home, the first thing I did was pour myself a glass of wine and, sitting down at the kitchen table, began to think about my next step. I've never been a person who makes impulsive decisions, but if Tyler and my parents thought they could just beat me, then it's time to surprise them. By the time my glass was empty, I already had a plan. The next morning, I walked into my boss Dave's office without an appointment, and he looked up from his computer in surprise, frowning slightly. "Haley, everything is fine? I didn't beat around the bush. Do you remember that accountant position in the Pittsburgh branch? Is it still open?" Dave raised his eyebrows slightly, folded his hands on the table, and studied me. "It's a leadership position, Haley. More responsibility, a different environment, a serious step." "I'm ready," I said confidently, not letting him doubt it. "I have been working here for 5 years. I consistently exceed all goals. My performance ratings are excellent. I am qualified." Dave nodded, and a faint smile appeared on his face. "I can't say I want to lose you here," he confessed. "But honestly, you'd be perfect for this position. Let me make some calls." He hesitated for a moment and then added, "The position starts in 4 weeks. Is that enough time for you to get your affairs in order?" "Perfect," I replied, already calculating all the next steps in my mind. As soon as I left Dave's office, I immediately dialed the number of my friend Jenna, who worked as a realtor. "I need to sell the house," I said without preamble, "as soon as possible." "Wow," Jenna even whistled. "Well, your place is in a good area and you've done excellent repairs. If you set an aggressive price, we will be able to receive offers within a week." "Do it," I said shortly. "Haley." Her voice softened a little. "I've never been more confident in my life," I replied firmly. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind. Jenna did an excellent job, as always, and within 5 days of the announcement, we had 3 competing offers. I accepted the highest of them, $285,000, $45,000 more than I paid for this house 4 years ago. Not bad, considering it was just a modest 2-bedroom house. Meanwhile, I began to study the housing market in Pittsburgh, focusing on areas closer to the company's office. Real estate there turned out to be cheaper than in my current city, and soon I found a modern studio apartment in a new building with a gym and a rooftop terrace for $220,000. I immediately made an offer and started the purchase process, organizing everything step by step. I acted quickly, methodically, without unnecessary emotions. I wasn't going to let them use me. I haven't told anyone in my family what I'm doing. Mom called twice. First to thank me for another money transfer, and then casually to ask if I was free next Saturday because they had something they would like to discuss with me. She tried to sound casual, but there was tension in her voice, as if she was waiting for a trick. "Of course, Mom," I replied just as easily. "I'll be there." By that time, I already had everything organized. The shipping company was supposed to arrive the day before dinner and pack most of my things for shipment to Pittsburgh. I left only 2 suitcases, clothes for a couple of weeks, a laptop, and a few personal belongings. The next day, after the movers took my things, I checked into a modest hostel in the city center. Sleeping in a room with strangers on a double bed was strange, but it was only for a few days. In 3 days, I had to fly to Pittsburgh and finally turn this page. And so it was Saturday evening, and I went to my parents' house for the last time. I parked a block away from their house, not wanting my fully packed car to give me away ahead of time. I walked slowly along the familiar path to the front door, breathing deeply, as if I were preparing for a fight that I had carefully avoided all my life. Mom opened the door with a tight smile. "Haley, it's good that you came," she said, a little too cheerfully. "We're just about to serve dinner." Inside, the atmosphere was tense, tension hanging in the air like an invisible veil. Dad was sitting at the head of the table, clearly uncomfortable, his gaze fixed on his plate. Tyler and Megan were there too, the brother with an expression of friendly indifference, and his wife with a slight shadow of satisfaction on her face. The children were nowhere to be seen. We exchanged a couple of meaningless phrases, and I accepted a plate of dinner but barely touched the food. Finally, Mom put down her fork, straightened up, and looked at me with the look I've known since childhood. The look of a person who is about to start a conversation that will inevitably be followed by a request, a veiled demand, or an offer that cannot be refused. "Haley, honey," she began in that persuasive, gentle tone she always used when she wanted me to give up something for Tyler. "Your father and I thought it would be wise for Tyler and his family to stay with you until they get back on their feet." I slowly turned my gaze to my brother. Tyler wasn't looking at me. His attention was focused on his plate, as if this conversation didn't concern him at all. Megan, on the other hand, was looking directly at me, her head tilted slightly to one side, with an expression in which there was a subtle challenge, as if she knew in advance that I had no choice, and she just had to wait for me to realize it. I took a sip of water. "What time is it?" I asked, knowing full well what the answer would be. Tyler shrugged with the air of a man who doesn't really care. "I'm not sure yet," he said casually, "but things are starting to get better with investments. Jason says we're on the verge of a big breakthrough." I had to hold back my laughter. 3 months later, Tyler was still clinging to that fantasy. "I don't think that's a good idea," I said, and my voice came out straighter than I'd intended. Mom hastened to intervene. "But honey," her voice took on a softness, as if she was trying to persuade me to do something obviously right. "Your house is pretty small, with only 2 bedrooms. You can take the smaller one and give Tyler and his family the main one," Dad suggested, looking up for the first time all evening. "Or," Mom added casually, "you could move in with a friend for a while until they stabilize." I opened my mouth, ready to protest, but stopped myself. What's the point? In a few days, I will no longer be in this city. It's better to let them think they've won. I sighed heavily, hunched my shoulders as if admitting defeat, and said wearily, "Good." Mom blinked, clearly surprised, because she had expected much more resistance. "Really? What is it?" she asked. "Yes," I said evenly. "When are they going to move in?" Mom and Dad exchanged glances. "Well, we thought next weekend would be okay." I feigned an indifferent nod, pushing my plate away. "Of course," I said, getting up from my chair. "I think I should start packing some things." Tyler and Megan exchanged triumphant glances, as if they had just won something significant. Mom looked relieved, as if a heavy burden of responsibility had lifted from her shoulders, and Dad still did not meet my eyes, preferring to study the pattern on the tablecloth or watch his coffee slowly cool. The rest of the meal was a blur. Mom, Dad, Tyler, and Megan have already started discussing the details and logistics of the move, deciding which furniture will remain, which will have to be moved to the warehouse, whether it is possible to convert my home office into a playroom for children, whether there is enough space for their belongings, and whether it is worth replacing my sofa, because according to Tyler, my back suffered too much on this old wreck. I was mostly silent, thoughtlessly shifting food around my plate, answering in monosyllables when I was addressed, not letting my emotions break through, not allowing myself to break down and destroy a carefully laid plan. After dessert, I got up from the table. "I have to go," I said, picking up my plate. "I have a lot to do if I'm moving next weekend." As I walked to the door, I could hear the conversation going on behind me, but their voices became quieter, as if they were already discussing something that did not require my participation. I told you she'd agree. Mom's voice was filled with satisfaction. Haley has always been reasonable. Should we help her pack her things? Dad asked uncertainly. No need, Megan replied with a slight sneer. You can leave most of them in the garage. It didn't look like she had anything valuable. We need to buy a new sofa, Tyler added. Her old thing is killing my back. I quietly closed the front door behind me. Their voices slowly faded into thin air as I walked away, leaving them there at the table, where they had already completely erased my presence from the house they hadn't even occupied yet. They have already discussed how to replace my things with their own, how to arrange my space for themselves, how to make sure that there is nothing left in this house that would remind me of me. But they had no idea that they would have nothing to capture. I checked my phone at the hostel. A new message from Mom. Thanks for understanding, honey. Your brother is so grateful. I didn't answer. Instead, she sent a short message to Jenna. Everything is going according to plan. The house is closing. She replied instantly. Great. The new owners received the keys on Thursday. The next morning, I woke up early, checked out of the hostel, and headed to the airport. As the plane took off, leaving behind the city where I had felt like the second option all my life, my chest felt lighter, as if a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders, making room for something new. My new apartment will be ready in 2 days. My new job will start in a week. After buying the apartment, I had about $65,000 left from the sale of the house, which I was going to invest conservatively, of course, unlike some people I knew. The first week in Pittsburgh was a pleasant blur. I settled into my new apartment, an elegant one-room studio with panoramic windows offering a magnificent view of the city landscape. I wandered around the neighborhood, finding cozy little cafes, interesting boutiques, and getting to know the new rhythm of life. The new job turned out to be better than I expected. A corner office, a 15% salary increase, and a team that seemed to really appreciate my skills. Everything was going perfectly until Thursday evening. Exactly 1 week after my departure, my phone exploded with notifications. 27 missed calls in 2 hours. 15 from Mom, 8 from Dad, 4 from Tyler, plus dozens of messages. One is crazier than the other, but I already knew exactly what had happened. Today was the day Tyler and his family were supposed to move into my house. I could imagine this scene down to the smallest detail. Tyler drives up to the house in a rented truck, full of confidence that everything is going according to plan. Megan is sitting next to her, checking the list of things they are going to put in the rooms on her phone. They get out of the car and walk to the door with a feeling of absolute rightness. Tyler, slightly complacently, knocks on the door, already imagining how he will go inside, how he will look around, how he will start giving orders. But a stranger opens the door, a complete stranger, and there's a look of bewilderment on his face. Excuse me, how can I help you? Tyler blinks, losing confidence. Us. We were going to move here. This is my sister's house. I think you made a mistake, the man replies calmly. This house belongs to us now. We bought it a week ago. And that's when Tyler understands. He realizes that he has been tricked. He realizes that there is nothing left. He realizes that he is left with nothing. I poured myself another glass of wine and settled down on my new sofa, stretching out my legs and watching the reflection of the night city flicker softly in the glass of the panoramic window. My phone, lying on the armrest next to me, vibrated, then again and again, like a madman drowning in an avalanche of missed calls and messages. I could just block them all. But before I could make a decision, the phone rang again, and the name Mom appeared on the screen. Against my better judgment, against everything my instinct for self-preservation told me, I answered, Haley Elizabeth Harper. Mom's voice was so loud that I had to move the phone away from my ear. Hi, Mom, I said calmly, taking a leisurely sip of wine. Don't you dare act innocent. Her voice was rising to a hysterical pitch. Tyler just came to your house with a moving truck, and some other family lives there. They said they bought this house 2 weeks ago. That's right. I nodded, even though I knew she couldn't see me. The Andersons, a lovely couple, 2 teenagers, they made a very good deal. There was a deafening silence on the other end of the line. Then slowly, almost in shock, "Did you sell your house without telling anyone? How could you do something so treacherous?" I almost choked on my wine. "Insidious?" I asked, chuckling. "That's a bit of an expensive word, especially from a man who planned to kick me out of my own house without a single warning." Silence again. This time it's saturated, viscous, and heavy, and then much quieter, much more careful. "Where are you, Haley?" I spoke calmly, as if I were reporting the weather forecast. "I got a promotion. The senior accountant at the branch is here." Her voice cracked. "So you just left?" she gasped, without saying goodbye. Without saying a word. I paused. "Something like how you were going to kick me out of my own house without asking first? That's not it at all." She was indignant. "No, Mom, that's exactly it." She paused again. "We're a family, Haley. We need your help." I closed my eyes, feeling a long, pent-up irritation boil up inside, but my voice remained flat and cold. "No, Mom. Tyler and Megan needed help. They needed help because of their decisions. They decided to sell the house for some kind of financial adventure. They decided to buy a Porsche. They decided to rent a luxury apartment instead of thinking about the future of their children. And instead of holding them accountable, you decided that I should sacrifice everything, as always." She inhaled sharply. "That's not fair, Haley." I smiled bitterly. "Oh, really?" She didn't answer. "It's been Tyler all my life. Tyler first, Haley is the second. When we needed new school clothes, Tyler got expensive, branded, fashionable ones. I am what was left in the budget. When we both had important events, you went to see him, but you just forgot to congratulate me. When Grandpa died, Tyler got a big, comfortable house, because you convinced Grandpa that he deserved it more. Haley, and now that Tyler has screwed up royally, when he and Megan have made the stupidest financial decision possible, you've decided that the solution to this problem is to take my house away. The house I invested everything in. The house that I renovated room by room with my own money. A house that belonged only to me." No. The line went silent for so long that I thought she might have hung up. But then, in a voice colder than I've ever heard her say, she said, "I do not know who you think you are talking to, young lady, but from now on, don't consider yourself my daughter anymore." I was ready for anything, to anger, the guilt, to manipulation. But for some reason, it hurt more than I expected. I swallowed, but my voice didn't waver. "I think we both know it's always been like this, Mom." Her silence said more than 1,000 words. I exhaled. "Oh, and one more thing. She didn't say anything. I'm canceling monthly transfers." The air seemed to freeze. The $600 I sent to Tyler's family every month? It's over. Another long, tense moment. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head as she tried to weigh her anger at me against her need for my money. "We don't need your money," she finally said, but there was no confidence in her voice. I smiled. "Great, because you won't get them anymore." I broke the silence with a goodbye, bye, and hung up before she could answer. Then I blocked her number. I blocked my dad. I blocked Tyler and Megan, just in case. Almost immediately, my phone vibrated again. Messages from unknown numbers. Tyler used his father's phone. Mom is a friend's phone number. I sighed, turned off the phone completely, and finished my wine in absolute, flawless silence. The next day, I bought a new phone with a new number, leaving the past behind as easily as deleting unnecessary contacts from a call list. Only a narrow group of people received this number: my closest friends, new colleagues with whom I had become friends, and several distant relatives whom I still trusted. For example, Aunt Patty, who, upon learning about my move and promotion, sent me a huge bouquet of lilies with a note: "You made the right choice. I'm proud of you." So 6 months passed. I was successful in my new position. I enjoyed my job, my superiors appreciated my ideas, my colleagues respected my professionalism, and my salary allowed me to live comfortably without looking back at every dollar I spent. I've made new friends. I dated a little bit, although it didn't lead to anything serious, and that suited me. But the most important thing is that I lived on my own terms, without the constant shadow of expectations, without the feeling that I owe something, and without the need to sacrifice myself for someone's convenience. Sometimes I thought about my family. I wondered if Tyler and his family were still living with their parents, how they were coping, and whether their investments had paid off, which was unlikely. I wondered if Mom and Dad weren't still supporting them, paying their bills, doing things for them that they'd never done for me. Have they ever thought about how I was treated? Do they regret it? But mostly I didn't think about them at all. One Sunday morning, when I was drinking coffee on the balcony, admiring the golden glare of the sun on the glass facades of skyscrapers, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but the code of my hometown. I barely answered, but curiosity got the better of him. "Hello, Haley." The woman's voice was cautious, hesitant, as if the person on the other end of the line didn't know how I would react. "Yes, this is Beth." I blinked, surprised. "Cousin Beth?" "Yes. I hope you don't mind that I got your number from Aunt Patty." I was silent, waiting for him to continue. I thought you should know what's going on." An unpleasant chill appeared in my stomach. "What is it?" Beth sighed. "Tyler and his family are still living with your parents." I didn't say anything. "And they have big financial problems." "Sure." "The investment, it was a scam." Beth spoke quickly, as if she was afraid I would interrupt. "Jason took off with all the money a few months ago." I wasn't surprised. "I can't say it's a shock to me," I muttered, sipping my coffee. "Yeah, well, your parents are in a difficult situation too," Beth continued. "They have to support not only themselves, but also Tyler's family, and your father even." She faltered. "Even what?" "He was forced to come out of retirement to work part-time in a hardware store." I took a deep breath, but I didn't feel anything. No guilt, no pity, no desire to help, just emptiness. I waited for Beth to start persuading me to send money again, to help the family again, to sacrifice myself again for Tyler's comfort. But she surprised me. "I'm not telling you this because I think you should do something," she added hastily. I frowned. Actually, on the contrary, I didn't answer, allowing her to explain herself. "Everyone in the family is discussing how smart you were to get out when you could," she confessed. "Even your mom." I tensed up. "What's my mom?" Beth smiled nervously. "She told my mom privately that they shouldn't have tried to take your house away from you." I froze. It was unexpected. Beth and I talked a little more. But after we hung up, I sat on the balcony for a long time, watching the streets of the new city that had become my home. I didn't feel any malice. I was not pleased to know that the family that had turned its back on me was now suffering. But I didn't feel guilty either. They made their choice. I made mine. And for the first time in my life, I chose myself. And I will never go back to being the second option.